In the concert hall, the natural sound of live performance is an intricate mixture of direct sound from the performer with incredibly complex reflected sound. In a great performance, this mix stirs the emotions and is intrinsic to our musical experience. Capturing that sound, that experience in recordings, is the constant goal of musicians, engineers, and producers. Unfortunately, the typical recording studio is nothing like a live performance space. It's an acoustically neutral environment that allows the engineer to isolate each instrumental track. This gives the control needed for high-quality recording, but lacks the effects of acoustical space that is ingrained in our perception of what live music should sound like. The processing power of the DRE S777 can literally recreate the acoustics of an actual room in real time. Imagine being able to go to a real concert hall, then to a small studio vocal booth, and even to the Grand Canyon, just by turning a knob. Here's how it's done. The real impulse response principle of the S777 begins with the recording of a detailed image of an acoustic space. First, a sweep tone is played through loudspeakers in a repeated cycle. Strategically placed high-quality microphones capture 4 tracks of that tone, along with all the acoustical reactions of the space, onto a computer. The process is repeated numerous times to eliminate any incidental noise. The sweep tone is then converted to millions of frequency-dependent pulse tones, and the result is a well-defined acoustic footprint of the sampled space. The sampling data is then stored on a CD-ROM, and the S777 now lets you recreate the real ambience reverberation of famous concert halls, studios, and sound stages gathered from all over the world.
Most of my projects over the past 2 or 3 years have been all acoustic. And I guess as the technology improves in terms of microphones and converters, one of the things that gets to be even more important is the idea of recording in an acoustic space and being able to capture early reflections in a very natural sense. But what seems to have been missing is the ability to match what we're capturing live to adding something later. What the S777 really is, it allows the engineer or producer to add real acoustics to a project. It's not to be confused with digital reverbs that we've all been using over the past 20 years. This is something totally different. This is real. It's as close to the real thing as we can get.
To get the most out of this new technology, Sony sent a team of engineers to sample some of the world's best concert halls and recording stages.
180.
Tom was hired to engineer the U.S. leg of the sampling tour.
As another involvement, I got so excited about this product when I first heard that Sony was coming with it. I guess I kind of got myself involved in actual sampling some of the spaces, because I had some ideas about some spaces that I would like to see sampled, and some of the acoustic spaces around the Northeast here where we are really merit getting a snapshot of, an acoustic snapshot, if you will, and sort of bottling these spaces.
That's great. Look at that proportion. That's great.
Yeah, it's a perfect shoebox, isn't it?
That's great.
We did a nice job up in Worcester, Mass. with Mechanics Hall. Kind of an unusual, smallish hall that I think is going to be very useful for all kinds of production. It's not a big grand concert hall, which there are many of that were captured and sampled in Europe. But this is a more smallish, a little on the drier side, but yet a space that has some beautiful early reflections and kind of a delicious space. And then, of course, we did some studios. We did Avatar, the big Studio A at Avatar, which is the old power station room, a real sought-after room here in the New York area for acoustic recordings, and almost famous for the drum sound in that room. So that's going to be kind of fun to use in a post sense. We went to St. John the Divine, not so much for the 6-second natural reverb of the big church, but there happens to be some really special sounding sort of side chapels. There's a baptismal room that's sort of octagonal and in shape, and of course it's all stone, and there are tons of statues and things, so there's beautiful scattering elements that create this wonderful reverb of about 2 to 2.5 seconds, which of course with the 777 is adjustable downward. You can't add more to what was there, but you can shorten what is there if it gets a little out of control. A very interesting space down in New Jersey. It was actually an old movie theater from, I guess it was the 30s. And it has been used as a photo studio for the past 15, 20 years, I understand. Very unique space, very open, very live, very airy, kind of unlike any of the halls or churches or anything else that we sampled, but I think it's going to be a very useful space.
The West Coast leg of the tour brought the Sony engineers to Los Angeles, to Ocean Way LA's Studio B. During the sampling process, owner Alan Sides worked closely with the engineers to most effectively capture the sound of this legendary Bill Putnam-designed room.
Another interesting space we recorded actually out in California was the Enterprise Studio, which is a smallish scoring stage as far as scoring stages go, but it has a real nice acoustic in the second and a half variety. And I guess for the kind of work I do, which is primarily jazz, some of these not so concert hall kinds of acoustic spaces are actually more useful to me, because I think jazz especially can get a little swimmy in a sort of concert hall acoustic. So some of these sort of lesser than a concert hall, but more than a studio, a typical studio kind of environments are spaces that I find fascinating to explore.
This would be the center speaker.
The exploration brought the team to perhaps the most exotic location visited, the Grand Canyon. Musician Paul Winter has been recording in the canyon at a secret location that he found after years of searching.
After the first 3 river expeditions, we still yet had not found that place that, if you played and listened with your eyes closed, give you a sense of being in that same kind of panorama that you see with your eyes when you look out from the South Rim. At the end of the 3rd trip, Sam West said that, he said, I know of a place where we might find this. And on the next trip, let's see if we can go there. And this was it. Absolutely. It was the beyond what I had imagined. I would say it's the most thrilling acoustic space I've ever played in. Any horn player enjoys playing in a place that enhances the sound, just like I think most of us like to sing in the shower or somewhere where it feels more resonant and more magical. For me, this is really the ultimate recording studio.
Collaborator and canyon guide Sam West helped Paul find this secret spot and agreed to lead the expedition for the Sony sampling tour.
Just everybody be really conscious about your footing and your hand holds. Have a mind out for the critters that live here, like rattlesnakes and scorpions and stuff like that. That's the thing that you want to be watching for when you're walking and when you got your hands up on a ledge where you can't see, okay?
The terrain is extremely rugged, and this section of the canyon can only be reached on foot. So a group of veteran Sherpas were enlisted to pack in all equipment needed to do the sampling. Although the team was here to do a job, the spectacular beauty of the canyon did not go unnoticed. Some sections of the climb were steep enough to require the use of ropes. made all the more difficult by having a computer or loudspeaker strapped to your back. To be on the sampling tour, you had to be a rock climber as well as an engineer.
I got you.
Finally, after hours of hiking, Paul and Sam led the expedition to their secret canyon, and the preliminary setup began. Before they began the actual sampling process, Sam gathered the team to make a Native American medicine wheel.
I just wanted to set this up with all of us to include us and to include the space in our relationship in some kind of sacred way.
This tradition was adopted by Sam and Paul to symbolize their respect for this special place.
Once we rock them down, they'll be fine.
Together, the team decided the microphone array should be placed on top of the rock ledge, about 100 feet above the bottom of the canyon, where the speakers would be located. This approximates the same setup used by Paul when he records here.
0.5?
1.5.
1.5.
Yeah.
The setup requires accurate placement of each microphone,
Okay.
even if you have to go to the edge of a sheer cliff to do it. After the setup was in place, Paul showed firsthand the magic of his ultimate recording studio. In search of the perfect reverb, Sony developed the S777, a system that can capture the finest and most unique acoustic spaces the world has to offer. The world is a big place. The search continues.